That worked. Hi there, friends and neighbors. Today I am doing a new test with my phone, this camera, and new camera mount for the phone that I just got. Hopefully everything's not shaking too badly. We'll see how this goes. It's just a test. I'm just varnishing this painting from before. Won't be a lot to see here because you have to let this dry for a few hours between coats, so this is just about getting a smooth layer of varnish on there with as little brush stroking as possible. Using matte varnish sealer. Cheesy little mom and pop brand. Not bad for a test. Okay. If this works like the other stuff I'm used to, you have to sort of let it dry, then gently brush in the opposite direction, then let it dry, then gently brush in the opposite direction. We'll see how it goes. Mostly this is a test of the camera, which is only about 6 inches away from my head, so it should be recording audio pretty well. Got the new light set up. It's pretty bright. It's kind of too bright, actually. It's right in my eyes. Have to find some setting for that also. Alright. Just gently smooth over those lines again. My dad was a concrete finisher for many years, and I helped him out working on the crew, and one of the last stages of finishing off a concrete job is to, if they want this finish, you take a broom and you brush the still wet surface of the concrete to give it these little textured grooves. Take a look at a piece of sidewalk next time you're on it, see if you can see little grooves. Concrete's a little bit different. You have to go kind of hard with the brush. By then it's pretty solid. So to get the trick is to get the broom to dig in without tearing up the surface of the concrete too much. In this case, I'm trying to smooth it out, so just a thin kind of wispy layer of this stuff to seal in the color and to sort of varnish it all together. I can feel the sponge brush gripping, which means I'll probably put it too thin some places, but I'm sure I'll do many coats of that. And I have neglected to supply myself with some water, so I will take the brush cleaner off this and just dip the sponge in that. Not sure if it helps or not, but I tend to use a lot of dirty water to clean my brushes, just as a circumstance. You end up getting a lot of tone out of that. Okay, anyway, on to what I was actually trying to do today. This is another piece of MDF that I've drawn with colored pencil and graphite and then sealed with matte medium, which is normally used to thin out paint or extend it, make it easier or longer to drying for acrylics. But it also works as a nice sealant, keeps the pencil lines in place so I can paint over them without too much trouble. You'll see how it's sort of soaked into the edges around here. When I get to the final stage, I'll varnish the entire block, keep the moisture out. This stuff's probably not incredibly archival, but if you varnish it, it should be okay for a long time. Let's see, I'll need a little color. I forget what I was planning to do with this thing. I might just do an underpainting on it first. A little bit of raw sienna matte fluid. I'm trying out this brand, Josania's, which is supposed to be really good quality. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. I guess a relatively large brush could work for this. I'll try this filbert out. So I'm just adding a little water to the paint to give it a washy feel, and then I'm going to go back in here. Guess I'm trying to emphasize the darker parts of the figure first. See, it retains its transparency, which is good. Nice big broad strokes. The filbert lets me do lines and fat areas at the same time. Broad areas, fat areas. I'm a fat area. Anyway, that's not what I was trying to say. Apologies for my vocal quality right now. I am pretty sick. But it's also my day off, so that means I have to paint. I'm going to paint, because I want to paint. I think my original plan with this was to do a bright colored background and then have sort of a dead, subdued colors on the mummy. This is just a sort of a underpainting kind of deal anyway. Clarify a few of the major forms that have gotten lost. This was always a problem for me with painting over drawings. Staying true to the drawing for one thing, but also just trying to keep the form intact. And it wasn't until surprisingly recently that I just figured out what people have been showing me and telling me for years now. Paint is best applied in thin washes. If you do it that way, instead of trying to define everything with a solid opaque mass, you will find you can still see your drawing. And let the drawing do some of the work, you know? Like I'm cutting back into this acrylic with some water now, just to push it back, give some of my lines back. I mean, you're going to lose some of it anyway. You want to keep as much as you can for as long as you can. Admittedly, this drawing's pretty muddy around the face area anyway, so there'll probably be a lot of rediscovery happening there. And just so we don't keep this purely monochrome, I'm going to give it a little punch. I'm going to take a little burnt sienna and mix that in. Especially on the closer elements, like this hand. That should help it pop a little bit. One of many, many, many tricks. I'm dealing with, I don't know, I guess it's artist block lately. I have a lot of projects on my plate, things I need to do and I'm trying to do. It's just really hard to get myself in a working mode. Just got back from a little trip out of town, and it was easy to find excuses not to paint or draw while I was out of town. But bad, obviously. Don't recommend that. Don't look for excuses. Every time you come up with an excuse in your mind, push it away. It doesn't matter what it takes. You get back in there and you keep working on something. If you can't work on the thing you really want to work on or need to work on something else. Just, you have to be working. If you can just keep working, eventually you'll get back around to the things you need to do. That's why I'm working on this instead of the project I'm supposed to be working on right now. Which I was working on earlier. It's not like I'm neglecting it completely. I'm still going to make the deadline. It's just, if you think in terms of priority, this should be lower priority than what I'm putting off to do this. But this kind of thing, another thing too with painting, you have to build in wait times. Like, I just varnished that other MDF. I've got to wait 2 hours before I can touch it again. So, in the 2 hours I have to wait, I work on this, go back to the other thing. I have stuff to do. It's also still summer here, the dead of summer. And I say dead because it is murder when you have a cold in this heat. Good God. It's like being inside a big sweaty sock all day. We have air conditioning, but it doesn't quite reach this room, so unless I want to relocate and risk getting paint all over the furniture, which I do not, I have to tough it out, make do with some fans, take breaks. I'm pretty sure it's not doing my cold any favors. jungle-like conditions. It looks like I'm going to have to reverse my original concept with this and go subdued cool colors background, warm vibrant colors figure to make it pop. But that's okay. Warm colors generally advance and cool colors recede anyway, so I'm not fighting nature quite so much. Hopefully the video is working out well. I'm not sure if I want to zoom in digitally when I record these things, or keep it at this angle so you get more of the view. You're getting about the same angle and view as my head. So this is almost the same way I see the thing I'm working on. The angle's slightly different because the table's slanted. I can't quite match my eye line because then I'd have a phone sticking in my face, but very similar. It's very similar. So if anybody's interested in process, there you go. I know I am. I find process fascinating. Speaking of process, it's always better to start with a plan, which I did not. I didn't have colors laid out or anything for this. This is basically an underpainting, so it's okay. I was trying to use the pencils and color pencils as underpaintings on these little MDF boards. Whoa! Wow, that's not good. I just ruined one of my brushes completely. Well, that's a cheap little brush. It's fine. But what I've found is I generally need a few more tries to get what I'm looking for. So I'm still going to do layers and layers of wash type paint until I get it to something like what I want, which was like that. That took quite a while. I've actually got a speed paint video of that one up if you're interested to check that out. I'm just mixing in some what is it? Pale lemon yellow acrylic. Different brand, but works fine. Just trying to get a lighter tone. I'm just going to go and do some fake highlights. Pick out my light source. So I have it for later. That's pretty much what underpainting's for, is to just secure your light source and define the form, so when you go in with the quote-unquote real paint, you know where to put it. If I'm lucky, some of the water I've added already will still be here, and it'll be a little bit blendy. Not really, apparently. Sort of dry brushing this in. This always happens with me with acrylics. I don't know if I'm too slow or what, but I end up dry brushing everything together for blending. Which is fine. I'm generally happy with how it works out, but I kind of want to try oils just for the fact that I'll be able to blend them without having to fight so much. I'm told. I have messed with oils back in school, but it was very limited, black and white kind of test pieces. It didn't come out very well. I didn't know what I was doing, basically. You don't hand a brand new driver the keys to a Ferrari, or in this case a tractor trailer, and expect them to know what they're doing. Jeez, it's drying out before I can get on the canvas. Okay, maybe this brush is just dead. I might be trying to go too thin. Or maybe I've managed to mix the exact color of the board. The idea with this mummy thing was, I love texture a lot in my drawings and paintings. It's sort of how I like to define form, is value through texture, or texture through value, I guess I should say. So everything has to have all like fur or scales, or be made out of rocks, or in this case be wrapped in lots and lots of layers of cloth, little strippy cloth. But yeah, I probably should have been a texture artist. I really wanted to be a game artist when I was a kid, because I thought video games were the be-all, end-all of creative art. I mean, as far as pop art goes, you know, like what they call commercial art. Because advertising and illustration never seemed like an option. But now that I've grown up a bit more and experienced a bit more of life, I realize that the game industry is a meat grinder, apparently. Even if companies want to treat their art staff well, there's too much money and time invested in these things for studios to sort of get any less ruthless. They have to be like movie studios, and that means a lot of get the product out, and it doesn't matter if you have to step on somebody to do it. That's unfortunate, because especially in the case of games, you need the staff. You need a very good, competent art staff to get a game out in any kind of time frame. And people lose heart when their game isn't out yet. If something's delayed, people get pissed. Even in these days of it'll ship when it's ready kind of mentality, even though that's acceptable. You deliver it and it's not perfect, they get pissed off. A lot of pressure on video games. A lot of money involved. Like movies. So I don't think my path probably lies in video games. I'd certainly take a job in video games. I got one right now. I do need a job. But I'm not pursuing video games per se. God, I really should wash this first. Change your brushes again, because this isn't working. I hit it with some almost pure pale yellow now. Oops, sorry, I bumped the camera. That is one problem with having this right by my head. Not quite the pure pale yellow, but a lot of it. Using a, I think it's a dagger brush now. Something with an edge, so I can get some paint down. I'm losing all my definition here. Yeah, I think these tones are just too close to the color of the board. Especially up here with the medium dried kind of white. Cloudy. Like I said, underdrawing. Underpainting, rather. So it's not that big a deal. How big a deal could it be? The thing's only like 3 inches or 2 inches square. That's another psychological trick I'm using here to help myself keep going. The small scale of the art means that I don't have to worry too much about it. If it looks like it's not going to work out, I can always sand it down and paint on it again. It's easier to recover one of these than it is a canvas. I'm trying to get these prepped for a show coming up in April. It's currently mid to late February now. Unfortunately, I have lots of things due between now and then, none of which are paintings. So no way to do double duty on any of this. Unfortunately. Been watching a lot of Sam Flegel and Pete Moorbacher have this podcast. I've mentioned it many times before. One Fantastic Week, where they sort of just talk shop with fantasy and illustration, fantasy and sci-fi illustrators. They've started doing an additional podcast called Critcast, where people in their community of artists and fans and whatnot post their website portfolios for critique and get some pointers. And I am in the middle of a redesign of my website, so this kind of advice is handy. They sometimes focus on the website itself, they sometimes focus on the work. So, I'm trying to glean what I can. It's useful. But eventually, I'd like to them. It'd be nice if they could crit mine. I needed to start supporting them on Patreon. I plan to, but I'm having a sort of a bad month for extra money. The art show I'm in is some sort of a self-funded group show, so all of us have to pay in for the venue. So I got that expense. For some reason, most of my bills for the month that used to fall on opposite paychecks now fall on one paycheck. So I'm going to pay all of that at once each time. And that trip out of town was not cheap either. Even though I didn't pay for everything. I probably didn't even pay my half. I feel bad about that, but I try to contribute as much as I can. Good news about money, though. I think I have another paying gig for a comic book cover. Haven't gotten the contract signed yet, but it looks promising. Cool writer guy that I met at the guild meeting last week. I do not have his Facebook handle in front of me, but I'll include him in the show notes. Neat guy. Really neat guy. And he's a writer, so he's doing a comic and he needs a cover, so I offered to take a look at the project. He sent me some specs and stuff. Nothing formal yet, but I should be getting concept art soon. I think we have a handshake agreement right now. I'm going to send him a contract. See what we can get done on that. It's just a short-term project. It's only going to be like a few hours work, I hope. Excuse me. A few hours work with revisions, and then, you know, a couple days probably altogether. It'd be good. It'd be nice to have something else paying coming in. And it's not a ton of money, but I like helping out indie comic creators a lot, so this is one way I can do it without actually spending money. And if it takes off, maybe I'll make a series. I can do more covers for him. I didn't want to get involved in making a comic with him, like doing the art for the comic itself, because I'm actually involved in another comic project already, which is the other thing that I worked on earlier today and need to be working on now. Okay, I'm about done with that for the moment. Gonna let that sit. And now I've got this. Now, this is just paper, colored pencil graphite on paper. I sealed it with matte varnish again, or matte medium rather. I was going to mount it down to a board, but I think what I might do instead is just try and paint it like it is and see what happens. I'm pretty sure I've got a scan of it already, but maybe I should make sure I have a scan of it first, just in case I ruin it. Let's see, how's that coming along? That seems fairly dry already. Maybe I can hit that again while I'm sitting here. I'm supposed to wait 2 hours, but I think I put it on so thin that there wasn't much to dry. Squeeze out my brush here. It's funny, this is one of the most useful brushes in the studio. Just a little cheapy foam brush. I think I got a pack of 5 for $2.50. But it's really good for smoothing out finishes and putting stuff on broadly. You can't really paint with this. There's no stiffness in it at all. So, but it is good for varnishes. Where did the varnish go? There it is. Another layer of matte varnish, I think. The idea is to do matte varnish on the whole thing and go back over it, the figure and the hands only, with gloss varnish, so they pop out a little bit in the light. It'll be very subtle. If it works at all, it'll be very subtle. Go heavier this time. It should be smoother now. The finish should be a lot smoother, but you can tell it's still streaking like crazy when I do this. And this matte varnish does dry not perfectly transparent. It's a little hazy, so you gotta be careful putting it on too thick. As you can see from over here, I got a lot of, over here, the upper left corner of this, tried to kind of a white cloudy finish. Which is okay, I can make it work. It's just good to know. I like the tone of this stuff. It's like a really, I'm not sure if the camera's catching the color exactly, but when it comes out all cloudy like this from the start, It's kind of a pale blue, which is an interesting contrast to all the warm colors in the background of this thing. If I had any sense, I probably would have done the whole thing in gloss varnish so the colors really popped, and then do matte varnish on the figure. But, you know, we'll see. That's probably enough. It's the first time I've been, quote-unquote, in the studio in probably 2 weeks. A chance to sit down and do something. Jesus, way too much water. I put a little water in the brush to thin it down so it's smooth out, but it's not really working. Let's hope I didn't just ruin this. Jesus. Okay, that's too much. We're going to take that out. Just dabbing it up. Actually, I might add to it. Maybe. It's not coming up everywhere. So it'll be thicker some places than others. And that's cool. Wow, it really did dull the colors down. I hope it dries a lot lighter than that. What else? I suppose I could break out the gouache and work on the rhino again. My hands feel really shaky today, though. Maybe I'll just draw some stuff. Some sketchy ideas. I got my first clutch pencil recently, which is a really neat kind of mechanical lead holder sort of thing. You have to sharpen it with a special kind of sharpener, which I got. And that was fun. So, yeah, the clutch pencil, this thing here, just holds a stick of graphite by itself. You can probably see there. Not sure the focus is working. But it's just, there's no wood involved at all. And it's not like a mechanical pencil because the graphite is quite thick and able to be sharpened to a point with some of these things. That's handy. And I just have an eraser here. Special Japanese 2B eraser. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Point's still relatively good, so I'm just going to draw something. I should be starting this way every time. I do so many of these monsters. I actually had a crisis of confidence a couple of days ago, thinking maybe I do too many monsters and not enough anything else. I know, you're probably thinking, how can there be too many monsters? Short answer, there it can't. You know, if you love them, which I do, it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as too many. But getting stuck in a rut with what you're drawing is a common problem, I think, for most artists. Feeling like you're just repeating yourself and not actually getting any better either. It's hard to take. It is, as they say, a bitter pill to swallow. And that's exactly what I've been doing lately, is swallowing bitter pills. I have been trying to incorporate a little bit different shapes into my monsters. A different style of line work, maybe. Instead of drawing nothing but intimidating hulking figures or ridiculously thin, I don't know, Tim Burton on acid type figures. Try to combine the two into something more biologically sensible. Been looking at a lot of fish, crustaceans, those kind of creatures. I think if you're going to do monsters, study as many animals as you possibly can, because the more real-world animal you can cram into your monster, the more believable it's going to be. And there are lots of real-world animals that are totally bizarre. They don't seem to make any physical sense, but they do exist. So I don't think that the real-world animals aren't strange enough to be monsters, because they really are. At least to us, anyway. And a lot of times, if you combine things, like, the obvious one is animal head, human body, right? or something like that. Human-style hands on a birdman or a frog, or, you know. This thing kind of looks like a piranha. Like a were piranha. Oh, that'd be crappy curse. When the moon is full, I turn into a tiny tropical fish. And since there's only one of me, it takes me like 10 hours to skeletonize a cow. It's not a very good curse, really. Get kicked out of the monster club for shit like that. Also, deliberately, I just did it here, but I've been trying to avoid this nostril thing I tend to do. I give my creatures these little bitty nostrils like a shark. And I hide them in fur or scales. Like I said, texture. I love texture. I think this guy will be a fish. I always screw that up. His head's tilted this way and down. So his fin should be like this. Like that. But not as much as I was doing it. Just want to make it follow the contours of his head a little bit. I noticed I've gotten good at doing, how don't you call it realistic, but I've gotten good at doing physical type structure, surface structure, like making this fin thing look like it's actually sticking out of his flesh, and that there's flesh there. A little subtle shading and some indicative lines make it look like it's embedded in his skin. But the problem with that is I don't do a lot of good with the form in the first place. So it doesn't help. It's like you can't polish something that's not finished. And that's what I'm good at, is polish. So I always rush into that. Okay, some gill action. It's funny, this clutch pencil, I'm using HB lead, which is softer than I usually use, I think. Yeah. And it does a great range of variety. I used to draw with just 2B pencils all the time. Plain old number 2 pencil to everyone else in the world who doesn't do art. And you can get a lot of subtle variation of that, but there's a limit to how dark your values can go. HB should be softer. So technically, I should be able to get more dark out of it, but that's about as light as I can go, and that's about as dark as I can go. And you'll notice I don't have that whole range in here. Not even close. You want to start light. And the fact that the point of this thing is usually razor sharp means it's hard to do a lot of shading. Turn it sideways and do this kind of deal here. It's hard to control. I'm just not used to drawing with this thing yet. And this setup is not great because the light is right in my left eye. It's right, I can see it right in my eye. Right there. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm gesturing to my eye. I got some fabric to build a softbox. So that the shadows like this will be a lot softer and easier to take in video. I should cut down some of the glare on my face too. The angle I have the table at that I'm drawing on makes the graphite shiny and reflective in spots, which is not helpful at all. Speaking about projects I've got going, I've also put in my spec for a drawing class I'm supposed to be teaching in lieu of the comic making class I was doing before, which they've decided to discontinue, the company that I was working with. I thought about continuing the comic book class on my own, but I have a feeling they could discontinue it because they couldn't get enough word out to the right people, and I think I'd have even less reach than they do, social media-wise. Most of the people that follow me that I follow and hang out with on social media are not in my city, so it's difficult for me to use social media to get some local stuff done. There are some. Everybody in the guild is pretty much local. But everyone in the guild is already artists or writers or whatever and don't really need the kind of training I'm offering, which is just basic comic book making or basic drawing for people who don't generally do that kind of thing. So it's possible in the future. At least I know I can do it. I have the curriculum and I have the materials, and I could teach it. I can give a lecture on making your own comics pretty easily. I'm doing a lot of this, I call it Jim Leeing. Not that I'm anything like Jim Lee or would be as good as him, but these little stray marks I've been doing, little wrinkles and cuts and scratches and stuff. Again, it's just part of my obsession with texture, I guess. The one cool thing about this clutch pencil is that it lets me do the hatching and cross-hatching because the fine point is on there and it maintains it for a while. Hatching and cross-hatching are much easier, as it would be like with mechanical pencil. With a standard wooden pencil, you generally wear the point out almost instantly. You end up having to turn it sideways to get straight lines, and it's variable. You also burn through it quite quickly because every time you sharpen it, you lose a lot of graphite and wood. Whereas this thing, every time you sharpen it, you're just scraping away the tip of the graphite so you have a point. So you're losing as little as possible, which is great. Let's try to give this underbrow area here some depth. Still connect it to the, I don't know what you call those furrows you get when you're mad. I guess they're just wrinkles. I still don't have a direct light source in this thing. It's pitiful. If you're going to do a modeled 3D surface, you need to determine your light source early on. And I did not. If you're going to draw strictly with lines, like I'm doing here, you need to plan it out. Otherwise you're going to have a lot of scratchy crap like this. I think combining this with a large, soft graphite pencil that doesn't have a soft point, so you can do the shading much easier, fill in bigger areas and whatnot, that would be helpful. Oh, sorry, just trying to sketch off these lines. This eraser, by the way, got it from Jet Pens. It's Japanese. It's formulated for 2B pencils. Excellent at removing 2B lead from paper. Stuff you thought was indelible comes right off. This is just the gouge in the paper, actually, where I scratched it on there pretty deeply. It's gone now. It's pretty impressive. Handy. So now I'm getting into the darkest darks. Just add a little interest. The thing about graphite is it's layered. It stays. I mean, it's heavy, right? So it sits on the surface of the paper, and it gets really thick. And you reach a certain thickness where you can't make it any darker. It just slides around because graphite's very slippery. So trying to apply more graphite to it to darken it just ends up sliding around, and it does blend it better, but at that point you might as well be trying to rub it on there with a Q-tip. One thing you can do, I've noticed, with this pencil and some others too, if you reverse the lines of your stroke, like these are all this way, if I want to emphasize the darks, I can go back in with a contrasting angle, and I can drop that in there pretty darkly, because it's not scratching the paper the same way. And even now, the clutch pencils, it's pretty much blunted now. That's like a round, it's like a ballpoint pen now. But I can still get a decent line out of it, better than I could a wooden pencil this dull. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen it up though. I hope I'm doing this right. I've only had one of these for about 3 days. I've done it where it comes out perfectly round and pointed, and I've done it where it comes out angled. I guess I'm rotating the pencil as I sharpen it. Yeah, it comes with a little cotton thing here to get the extra graphite off too, which I didn't realize. That's pretty sweet. That is a very sharp fine point. Like a razor. Incredibly handy for tiny little lines until you break the tip off like I just did. The sharper it is, the easier it is to get a dark line out of it, but also the more it gouges into the paper. So you have to be ready. You have to know what you want out of that line. Well, anyway, the drawing class. I was talking about that like 10 minutes ago. I've submitted my proposal for it. They asked me to do it, so hopefully they're still interested in doing it, but they've had a lot of management changes the last month or so. I have not yet heard back about dates or location. So hopefully they won't say, well, never mind, and I won't be out of another revenue source. Because I am aching to quit my retail job. At least the one I have now. I don't mind working another retail job. If I have to, I will. That's fine. But I got to get out of this one because the commute and the crap that I'm putting up with from the upper management levels of the organization, difficult. Not to talk out of school, and I'm not going to say where I work, so it doesn't matter. I guess you could find out if you really wanted to. Let's just put it this way. The management does not want the current staff employed anymore at that location. Probably me too. And they are taking steps to remedy that. So it's a bad scene. It's not fun. The people are still pretty fun, but it's oppressive. It's kind of... It feels like the hammer could fall at any time. And they're tearing the building down sometime soon. We don't know when. That's just it's a bad trip. You don't want to have to put up with that. This is kind of what I wanted the clutch pencil for, is these tiny little detail lines. Because I wanted to draw in colored pencil and then go back in with this to emphasize the shadows and the wrinkles and whatnot. Which I did on this with just the normal 2B pencil. I actually filled in a lot of detail with the graphite on this one. I was lucky to keep some of the color in place. But you can see I just did graphite here to indicate the inside of the mouth. I didn't actually darken it. Actually, it's sealed now. Will it still take graphite? Yeah, it will. Okay. But if see, now I'm planning to paint that, so that spot I just put graphite on is going to smear like crazy when I put paint on it. This technique is inspired by one of my art heroes, Jeff Lafferty, who got a lot of his inspiration from Drew Struzan. I think I'm saying that right. Really great poster illustrator, and a bunch of other people too, but Drew's one of the best mixed media illustrators that I've seen. I love the way you can still see the pencil marks and all his stuff. He's not afraid to go back in and use the pencil for detail after the paint. And since he's using airbrush a lot of the time, yeah, it's really sweet to see. You get these soft, subtle colors blended with these hard, sort of hatching shadows and stuff, and it's a really good mix. It's a very particular look. I dig it. It's not really how I work so much, but I love trying it. My thing is more texture and detail, texture and detail. You know, I have to tell myself to lay off a lot. The cool thing about shading, though, you can shading with line. You can just go in and drop some lines randomly over something, and when you pull back a little bit, it's shaded. Anyway, there's the drawing for today. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see it a little better. Oh, it's huge. There he is. Rawr, monster. Anyway, I've been going for about 20 minutes longer than I had intended, and I'm sure no one wants to watch all this crap, so I'm going to stop recording and see what it takes to upload this to YouTube. I'm not going to edit it down to chunks like I'd planned originally, but I'll probably title it just messing around in the studio or something like that. Anyway, this is sort of like what it's like for me to work in the studio, so you've been privy to how I work, more or less. It's chaos. It's utter chaos. Thanks everybody for watching and liking, subscribing, sharing if you do. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free to make some YouTube comments or send me an email at nathan.seabuild@gmail.com. You can find my work on Instagram or at my Tumblr, which is nathandrawsdaily.tumblr.com. Eventually my website, Seabuild Illustration, will be back up. It's still the old site right now, but hopefully there'll be some new stuff on there soon. Whatever you do, if you're involved in creative endeavors or you want to be, the key to everything, to get better, to produce better work, to get jobs, as far as I can tell, is to keep trying. So, as always, keep making stuff.